microphone configuration today, but
really,
every
it
time
feels
it's different.
higher today.
It is higher.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to not slouch. Especially because of like the angles that we take the video component, which like, hey, if anyone's not watching the video component, you're missing out on some good facial expressions, I will say. So we were just talking about how like, I don't like to hide my face, so.
No, she does not.
She knows.
Neither one of us really does well with the blank slate face.
No, absolutely not. But welcome back to Couch Convos, the podcast where we talk about all things mental health, real life, and navigating just kind of universal truths of what we go through as people.
Yeah.
Good times.
Today's topic, self-sabotage. And
inner critic.
Your inner voice.
Well, because I liked this for today because we named it last episode. It's like we named that voice. Obviously yours was Jessica and mine was like Olga or something like that. And I like got to like talking with some friends and I was like, wait, we really need to talk about like self-talk and like negative self-talk and things like that. Because I feel like it's just a bit of a universal, unfortunately.
It definitely is. But to start off, what's been up? What's been happening? How are things?
I'm trying to have like a slow down summer. Like I know there's like hot girl summer.
Yeah.
But like for me, I want to do like a slow your booty down summer.
Slow your roll summer.
Yes. And it's pretty nice. Like Ryan just replanted our garden, so we've got like flowers everywhere, and like he planted like a rose bush out front of our house, which was sweet. Like I got back into reading, and so I'm trying to slow down as a human being, because I haven't done that in a while. So figuring that out. Also trying to figure out what that looks like professionally. Also getting things done and growing. But I feel like we're just constantly learning what that looks like. So what about you?
Totally. I'm probably the opposite. This has been very much a let's do everything. But with that, I'm realizing that I'm hitting a point where I probably need to like slow my roll and have some just chill weekends.
Yeah.
Which I'm not doing currently yet, but it is on my to-do list is to have a slow weekend.
It's on your let's do everything list is to
do
nothing.
Is to do nothing.
I feel like I just need like a balance of that because like the slowing down is very lonely for me, like interpersonally. But at the same time, if I was doing everything, my social battery just would never.
Yeah. Well, I love the way that you described this, the gremlin.
Yes.
Diving into the gremlin that lives inside of our head. And it's just kind of like me, the little under the bridge troll that's like, you shall not pass unless you do these things. Or you, for me, it's like a you suck gremlin.
So, okay, was there ever a time in your life where you just kind of had to catch yourself and be like, whoa, I just spiraled so far?
Dude, okay, so this wasn't exactly a I guess it was kind of self-talk. It had happened this week. And my poor roommate, Monica, love her to death. So you know how, like in horror movies, whenever someone shuts their eyes and is doing something, that there's like someone behind them or something happens. Yeah. Okay, well, because of that, I always have this thought when I, like wash my face or do whatever that's gonna happen, right? Well, this week my worst nightmares came true. So I'm taking a shower.
Hopefully it wasn't like a demon behind you.
Thankfully no demon.
Not from like what's the movie I'm thinking about with like the red and black, almost like Darth Maul behind them. Is it Insidious? I think it's Insidious.
Maybe.
But continue.
But okay, so I'm taking a shower and I'm getting out, and the first thing that I usually do is I wipe my face. And so I grab my towel, I start to wipe my face, and I feel something crawling on my foot.
Is it Penny?
No.
Oh no.
Oh, it is not. So I live in an apartment. I'm on the first floor of said apartment. And I instantly, my reflexes kick in, and I just like, and I just shove my foot like essentially to the other side of the wall, of kicking whatever is on my foot off of me, and blood-curdling scream. I hear Monica in the living room like, what's going on? And she's like up and like racing towards me. Now, of course, like I am standing there.
Yeah.
Post-shower.
Yeah.
So I look down. It's a roach. The biggest roach that I have seen in our apartment. It's no joke. Gotta be like 3 solid inches Like,
Oh,
she was massive.
ooh.
She was girthy.
Oh,
So, of course, I'm freaking out. I'm screaming. I hate bugs. All the
Yeah.
things.
Well, 'cause
Whatever,
if
Monica
there's
comes
one,
in.
There's probably more.
And that's where my spiral came in.
Oh, no.
I had already taken time, because we've had roaches before, so I took time to, like, shove toilet paper in all the little holes of the crevices and such. So I'm thinking, how
How'd they get in?
did you get in here?
Yeah.
Did you crawl up the drain? Can you crawl up my toilet? Are you in my bed when I am gone? Is Penny being attacked by roaches in her crate?
Tiny
as she
little
lays
dog.
there? Yes, they could take her down if there was more than like 5 of them.
Well, what if Penny's the ringleader? And those are like her pets.
Her minions?
Yeah. She's Gru and they're her minions.
Could be possible. But because of that, my entire like world just I went total spiral mode, and I was like, there's roaches in my bed and I can't sleep now. So I did not sleep very well that night. But that was my latest spiral, was that I was being infested by a roach army.
Oh my. Also, was that thunder?
Is that thunder?
I think that might be thunder.
That's so weird. It was definitely sunny when I walked in today.
Yeah.
Maybe they're moving or stuff.
I don't know if anyone could hear that, but that was just like a very loud, again, from the last podcast. I need an ADHD evaluation. I understand. But, you know, we're off duty when we're doing these things.
Yeah.
By the way, this is not a substitution for therapy. We're just therapists. Okay, so in those moments, the voice was like, danger. They're everywhere. No escape.
Yes.
Hypervigilant.
Correct. And you need to do more, because then I went searching for all the extra holes from the holes that I had already plugged, and I was like, you're not closing the holes closely enough. Do better.
I bet the rain did it.
Yeah, I guess so. But it was on Tuesday, I think, so it wasn't even a rainy
You guys are
day.
really clean. Oh no.
We are very
But now, like, that
clean.
makes me think about things, like, for you. Oh,
right?
that's so hard.
And we had the bug people come in and spray multiple times, so
I think that just shows that, like, our inner voice, if there is any truth to a thought, it will cling to that. Because you're right, like, having a bug in your apartment, it's valid. That's a valid reason to, like, think about cleanliness, to think about, like, extermination, whatever. But then that voice is like, ooh, there's a little bit of fact. I'm going to take that and run with it.
What about yours? What's your latest spiral moment?
Mine happened very much, like, in my own head about myself. I think just because, like, I'm either with clients where I don't think about myself, or I'm at home, and, like, Ryan, my husband, is just a very unproblematic man. And so, like, if he's spiraling, I don't know. Or, like he wore a shirt with, it looked like the periodic table, but it was minions. And they all had different emotions. So, like,
so cute.
This man is very harmless, very sweet, kind man. So all of the overthinking is in my own head.
Right.
It typically comes, like, social media really has been bugging it recently. And it's been socially. Because, like, obviously, like, a lot of, like, my social circles are really spread out. And they're smaller now. I think that's just, like, getting older. I just try to focus on quality over quantity now. Also because, like, our time is really limited.
Yeah.
But I noticed it when I was like, oh, like, people are hanging out. I'm like, oh, like, that looks fun. And then I go to, like, oh, I wish I had been invited. And then it was like, well, maybe I wasn't because I haven't done things in a while. And, oh, that's why I'm being forgotten. And, like, okay, makes sense. I'm just going to pick up my book now. So that's what mine does a lot. It's a lot of, like, social stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all self-inflicted. I wish there was a bug.
A roach spiral.
But again, like, it was social media based.
It's the social roach.
That's a good one. That should be the name of another podcast episode.
The social roach. Okay, so we did talk about last time, like, what we would name our inner critics, and yours was Olga.
Yeah.
And so
She's
Olga's
aggressive.
Personality. What would her personality be?
Aggressive.
Yeah.
Very aggressive.
Okay.
And hyper generalizing. So, like, it'll take one thing. I feel like our inner critic will always do this.
Yep.
We'll take, like, one thing that we've done, and we'll talk about these things later. And it'll say, like, oh no, this defines you. Did you say no to one social event because you were sick? You're not social.
Yep.
People don't like you anymore.
Right.
Goodbye. What about Jessica? What's her personality?
Okay. So, to all the Jessicas out there, again, I apologize.
You're great. We love
great.
you.
Seriously, like, this has nothing to do with any person. I don't even think I've met a Jessica that's acted in this way. But so Inside Out, you know, little Envy.
Yeah.
How she, or no, not Envy, Disgust.
Ooh, Disgust.
Disgust.
Okay.
Yes.
The
Her little
one.
Is she purple or green?
Oh no, that's green. Wait, there's a green? No, it's green. You're right. Because
there's
green
movie.
And then there's blue.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
green.
Think,
yes, I think green, but she has like some purple in her.
Okay, so yes,
yeah, so she's got a little Barney moment going on. But yes, Disgust would be her personality. Just like she's like, ew, God, why did you do that? What is wrong with you?
Dude, that's a lot of shame.
So very judgmental, lots of shame. AKA, you know, why? Shout out to Alice, my past therapist. We did a lot of shame work with Brene Brown. But yeah, that would be her personality, is essentially just like copy Inside Out, Disgust into my brain for Jessica.
So, okay, today we're going to break down what is negative self-talk. Sometimes, like, where does it come from? What to do with it? And also just kind of, like, honestly, like, validating and affirming this experience. Yeah. Because I feel like it's very easy in just a very fast-paced, instant gratification world to get caught up in what your own thoughts are. And we forget that everyone has this inner voice. And it sounds different to everyone. Yeah. I'd actually be interested to talk to, like, a man about what their inner voice sounds like. Yeah. Because if ours sounds, like, hyper-generalized and very judgmental, like, what does a man's inner critic sound like?
That would be interesting.
We should ask our male counterparts at some point.
And also asking any male listeners.
Tell us.
If you want to, like, be a little vulnerable in the either direct message and or comment section, let us know, like, what your inner voice is like, because that would be an interesting.
And what their names are. And what the gender of your inner voice is. I'm curious.
Interesting.
Mine automatically goes to a woman.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Automatic woman.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of things to unpack there. So, okay, negative self-talk. I crack up, and I was telling Caroline this before we even, like, started this episode. Obviously, like, we write, like, a framework for how we want to just steer conversation, mainly so that we don't forget anything, just because we go on tangents once in a while, which, like, it's kind of why we do this. Yeah. And there's some times where I realize that, like, we're working on the framework, maybe at a time where, like, I'm a little unhinged, I'm a little tired. Because, okay, I wrote in, like, defining negative self-talk, I'm going to have to, like, censor this, but I said, negative self-talk is the inner monologue that is less of a motivational coach and more of a mean B word.
Female dog.
Yeah. Word. Got it, past Sarah. So yes, negative self-talk, it's that, like, inner dialogue that is not motivating, it's not empowering, it's not holding you accountable, it's just mean, it's just a bully.
And when I talk with clients about this, so many of them say, God, it's one of the hardest things. And even when I think about myself, this is one of the hardest things because it's automatic.
Yes. And
those ants.
It's also reinforced.
Yeah.
You know how it's reinforced? You're going to love us. Capitalism. It's what we talked about in past sessions, in past episodes. It's because we're constantly told and we're giving messaging that we're not enough. So it's feeding that inner critic. Yeah, it definitely is.
And when we talk about inner critics, we have to go into cognitive distortions and
take out the old psych textbook.
And no joke, I have a printout of these in the back of
I do too, actually.
Of my thing that I have to pull out because I'm like, I think there's 12.
There's so many of
them at least. So I'm like, and I apologize to say, listen, like, I studied in school, but I can't remember all these just off the noodle. Yeah. So pull them out instantly. But I love bringing those into session and being like, okay, let's figure out which ones are more salient to you, because we're all different with which ones, like, hit the hardest.
Well, and I think, like, what's cool about, so obviously cognitive distortion is what it sounds like. It's like putting a filter on reality. Yeah. It is a thought that is not completely accurate in terms of what's real. And I know, like, everyone has these in their own way. That's why there's categories. That's why there's the, 12 most common ones. But I think that, I know sometimes we talk about, like, diagnostics and it's just a label. It doesn't mean anything. But I think for cognitive distortions, having a name is so powerful because when we have these distortions, we lose our, like, grasp of reality sometimes. But it's like, okay, hold on. No, there's a name for what I'm thinking about. And one, I'm not losing it. And two, this is normal. Yeah. And I can bring myself back.
It's not just me. So, like, there would not be a label for it if it was just me.
So let's break down, like, a few of the most common ones.
Yeah. Magnification and minimization.
I'm a minimizer.
Definitely a minimizer. I think both of us are very good at being like, oh, it's okay. Like, that's no biggie. And then with the magnification, a lot of a subgroup of that would be catastrophizing.
Yes. And when I think of catastrophizing and like magnification, I think of, you're also a nerd too, so I don't have to preface this. A series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
Aunt Josephine. That is literally catastrophizing.
Yeah.
In a person. So obviously, like, are we aging ourselves with knowing that?
No. No, because they did a remake.
I think that ages that.
Does it really?
Maybe.
Because I'm thinking of it as, like, also Goosebumps, and I feel like the kids are into Goosebumps, too.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Well, good. So in like a series of unfortunate events, there's a character, Aunt Josephine, who like, oh my gosh, what was it? There was a glass doorknob, and she was like, well, if the doorknob overheats, the glass will shatter, and a shard will hit you in the eye, and you'll go blind.
Yeah.
And so it's always like catastrophizing. It's disaster brain. It's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then obviously minimization is
like, it's okay. There's a fire.
It's the meme of the dog at the kitchen table saying everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Like, I don't even need to worry about it. Everything's gonna be okay. Yeah. Or just like
okay, that is thunder.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely thunder. Also, that's aggressive.
That is aggressive.
And I don't see rain. Wild. Hopefully, that would be awesome if the podcast picked that up right when we're talking. Cognitive distortion.
We're talking about disaster brain and like on cue thunder.
Nice. Life is art, and art is life.
The universe and Mother Nature is a couch convos thing today.
Why are we like this? Anywho, but yes. Okay, so we have magnification and minimization, catastrophizing. Next one is the one that you mentioned.
Overgeneralization.
Yes.
So I am the queen of that sometimes. Yeah. It is like one thing that you think or do or say that defines who you are.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm a very clumsy person. But that in itself is overgeneralizing. I'm not. Most people who look at me would say, like, you're not at all.
No.
But I literally trip over my own 2 feet very often to the point where I overgeneralize that.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm just kind of oafy. I'm really not. Like,
no, you're definitely not, because you were like very good at your sport for a very long time.
So it's taking like one thing and just running with it.
Yeah.
And especially like a lot of people will use this when they make a mistake, and they'll say like, oh, I accidentally misspoke with a friend. I made an error. I was rude. I had a bad day. That makes me a bad friend, a bad person. I'm the worst.
Right.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. Especially in your own brain.
Yeah. And then the magical thinking.
Yes, magical thinking. This one honestly is kind of like my fave, but it's essentially that I have control over what happens to other people, whether that's thoughts, emotions, responses, all of that, of like, okay, well, if I was a better daughter, then my mom would not be upset. Yeah. So it's essentially taking like my life and saying, if I did things better, it would be better for someone else. Or if I didn't do this thing, then this other thing would not have happened. So essentially, like, I am magic.
And that's actually very similar to personalization, too. I feel like those are like siblings. Yeah. And when I think of personalization, I think of like the movie The Butterfly Effect, which is like old school Ashton Kutcher, which love. Good. I've talked about that movie twice in 1 week now.
Have you really?
I have.
Maybe you need to go watch it.
Both times I've talked about Ashton as well. The things you think about. But it's pretty much this idea that you're taking onus and accountability for actions that aren't yours. And you're saying like, oh no, that's my fault. Like, okay, so say if the thunder turns into a storm and the storm upsets the dogs at home and Hank, my puppy, accidentally like has an accident on the floor, I'm going to say like, oh, nope, because we scheduled the podcast at this time, Hank had an accident. This is my fault.
Right.
I'm not a good dog owner.
Yeah. And I believe that. Yeah, no, I've read this. Okay, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, am I making that up? But I'm not. And that those are a lot, we see that a lot with OCD and anxiety with the OCD.
Yes.
Of like the feeling of personalizing events. Like if I don't do this, then this won't happen. I think I saw someone was like flying and they're like, don't worry guys, I like buckled my seatbelt 5 times so the whole flight's safe kind of thing.
Well, it's this idea that there is a domino effect. And if you shift your role, absolute catastrophe.
Right. Okay, so then we have jumping to conclusions.
That's a fun one.
This is where I get all of my exercise, you guys, because I am a major jumper to conclusions of like, okay, I bet because I said this that now they're upset with me. Mm-hmm. When in reality, they probably didn't even hear me say it.
Yeah.
So like the mind reading of, I bet I know what they're thinking because I said this, that now that they're thinking this, and I need to go ahead and just like comment on that and make sure that they know that I'm not upset and that they're not upset with me. That's that's my disgust, I guess. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't really sound like disgust. So it'd probably be like, oh my God, I can't believe that she's... and then also fortune telling. Do you want to talk about fortune telling?
I think it's just like having this idea that you can see what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. It's like jumping. It's like if you combine jumping to conclusions and mind reading. Right. It's like, well, if I don't do this, then this disaster is going to happen later. Yeah. Or, okay, if like today, for example, like if we don't do the podcast now, our business is going to fail. Mm-hmm. It's not.
No.
It's fine.
Right.
There's probably very minimal repercussions, if any.
Right.
So that's kind of what it is these things will have such a disastrous effect on my future, too.
Right. And we shouldn't do that.
Should.
Which then leads us to the should. So not shoulding yourself. Which is essentially just the idea that there is no one way of being. There is no one way of doing. But we have this preconceived notion that there are things we should do or things we should feel. But in reality, it's like, no, you just gotta live with like the information that you're given right now and the way that your body and your mind is perceiving things.
Absolutely. And then finally, we have all or nothing thinking.
Woo-hoo.
Which I actually have a lot of clients who I do a lot of work on all or nothing thinking. Mm-hmm. I think it's because I see a lot of healthcare providers and I've noticed there's a ton of all or nothing, very black and white with healthcare. I think just because folks are used to a triage model where it has to be black and white. Mm-hmm. And so it's made them successful, but then cognitively, it kind of shoots you in the foot a little bit. Yeah. And so it's this idea of there's no gray area thinking where, and I think that sometimes we assign morality to it where it's like, nope, this is bad, this is good, this is yes, this is no. Mm-hmm. And it's assigning thoughts to that. So it's like this idea of if you're trying to make a decision, your cognitive distortion could be like, oh no, like you have to do this or you have to do that. There's no compromise. There's no in between.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
It's an interesting one.
So an interesting fact. The National Science Foundation found that about 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. So it's not just you.
80%.
80% of our thoughts are negative. Which then I look at that and it's like, okay. And then I think 20% of my thoughts, and I wouldn't even say are positive, but are neutral or positive.
Because I don't know how you feel, but like my first reaction to that thought is like, no, it can't be 80. Yeah. But then I think a little bit deeper into that, and I'm thinking, okay, what defines a negative thought?
Right.
And I'm thinking, like maybe it's like unproductive, critical, or judgmental, or just mean.
Right.
And if I loop all of those together, it's like, yeah. That's probably 80.
Well, and if you think about it, we're having these thoughts, and in our brain, they're feeling normal, so they just kind of like come and go, when in reality, we're not grasping onto like, ooh, that didn't sound good, or that wasn't positive or neutral, that was very negative, because it's just happening. So when I think about my thoughts, I'm like, how many negative thoughts am I genuinely having in a day that I'm just not picking up on?
When it's this idea of like you said, like, what's our baseline? Because I know that sometimes, like, if I'm being like especially like kind to myself, I notice it, and I'm like, ooh, we're having a great self-talk day today.
Yeah.
But then you got to think about the other side. Is that like, does that mean that my baseline is inherently neutral or is it inherently negative? And I think just like knowing how I talk to myself, it's probably more inherently negative. Yeah. But I think it's this idea of like asking yourself, like, what's my baseline in terms of my self-talk?
Right.
Which we can actually change and we can kind of tweak a little bit. We'll talk about that later. But the fact that it's 80% is usually net negative.
Right.
So, okay, we talked about what negative self-talk is, cognitive distortions, so just like different fonts for negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Where in the world does this come from? Because everyone's got it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there.
It's like, where does it not come from?
Honestly.
But before we get into like where it comes from, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What's your typical one? What is like the soundtrack to your inner critic? What are they saying?
It's your fault. That's usually what it is. Well, because I think about, I apologize a lot. And I know that, like, we've had our I'm sorry episode.
Right.
And I still have to catch myself. And I think I've gotten better, but, like, there's still room for growth. It's usually like, oh, no, that's your fault. Like, okay, like, friends are hanging out. No. And you're at home. That's on you. That's your fault. Or, like, ooh, you're not seeing progress here. It's your fault.
Right. You're not doing enough.
Right. Exactly. Like, you're not doing enough. You're not working hard enough. So I think it's like, do better.
Be better.
Yes. Yeah. What is your like recurring theme?
Oh, mine's definitely like nobody likes you. like no one likes you. They're annoyed with you. They hate you. Your clients don't like you. You're probably gonna lose like all your business. Like it's just constantly the idea of like I am not enough. So you're just like you're not doing enough. Mine's like I am not enough.
So
for
that's
any
like
of the things.
So mine's more guilt based and yours more shame based.
Right.
Oof. Okay.
Lovely.
But I do think though that, and I think the hard part is there's an element of our negative self-talk that causes us to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's hard because sometimes when we work on it, it's like, well, hold on. Negative self-talk can be a motivator.
Yeah.
Because I know we talked about it. I'm like, all right, bet I'm going to prove you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like one way to tackle it, but still there can be like an unforeseen side of negative self-talk that's helpful.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not.
Right.
It's
like
mean.
it's like anxiety. The conversation of anxiety. It was great for keeping you out of danger, but it's like, now I'm not in danger and I'm still having it. So it's like the same thing.
It's like when I had a medical procedure recently, and I was like, well, I learned I have a good pain tolerance. It's like, no, ma'am, we don't have to silver linings this one.
Right. Which then leads us to where does this come from? And of course, being psychotherapists, we're automatically going to go to
childhood. Tell me about your mother.
Yeah, tell me about your father. Tell me about all your family. So, like, family, we love them to death. They're amazing. Yep. But sometimes, some things are said, we internalize it, and then realize, like, ooh, okay, that's that with me.
Yeah. Well, and I even think that, like, so there's actually a lot of really cool, I'm going to go off script with this one. There's a lot of studies that talk about in utero self-talk from whoever's carrying the child, so it's typically the mother, is highly crucial for the development of the baby's DNA.
Wow.
And it's the epigenetic makeup of your maternal grandmother.
Right.
Because the eggs...
3 generations.
Yes, the eggs that became you were probably within your mother when she was developing.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those where, like, I actually asked my mom at one point, I was like, oh, like, what was grandma thinking when she was pregnant with you? And it wasn't a very positive life experience for my grandmother. I didn't know her well before she passed. But it was one of those where my mom even said, like, oh, I'm so sorry. But it's this idea of, like, oh, like, what she was going through impacts how my DNA is expressed now. And so if we're thinking about it, our self-talk impacts us to a genetic level. Right. And so there's obviously, like, early childhood, but there's also prenatal implications.
Yeah. And then when we think about nervous system, right? Because that's where all of that's coming down. And then, not to get obviously too graphic, but when it comes to like the way that we are birthed, whether it's, C-section
traumatic,
or
quote unquote natural, which is still traumatic.
Right. And I've heard mixed things about this. I heard from a counselor / psychiatrist one thing, but then I heard from a pediatrician something else. So I'm going to put it out to the world. Is that when you do have like a natural birth that is not C-section, so we'll just say the other, that actually helps with calming the nervous system because it...
Oh, is it because it's less abrupt?
Yes, less abrupt, and it allows for like the physical sensation, and so then that like calms the central nervous system when you're born, whereas C-section does not. But then someone else said that's not true. So
That's really interesting.
Let's do some research on that, you guys.
So it's like prenatal. There's obviously a lot of like how our self-talk impacts our development. Well, basically how the self-talk of our carriers impacts our development, but also obviously, like we mentioned, childhood. And it's so much of how the people around you express their self-talk matters. And I actually was thinking about it when I was driving here. I think I'm very lucky that I don't remember. Like, growing up, I don't remember if my parents said anything about themselves or how they talked about themselves in front of my brother and I. Like, there were always little things. Like, I remember, like, my mom didn't love to be in pictures growing up.
Right.
But I never internalized it, which I do think that that's a very rare case where I can't recall, because there's a lot of people close to me where they talk about, like, oh, like, my mom was always really harsh about her body or her relationships, things like that. Or like my dad was always hypercritical on his career development, things of that nature. I don't remember that.
Right.
But even as young as like 2, these kids, they internalize these messages.
Yeah.
When even like, I think about my nephew, he's about to be 4.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing and he went to my brother's desk and he went, okay, gotta log on to work now. And it was positive.
Uh-huh.
And he starts like pretend typing, really sweet, really cute. But then he like made this really big sigh. He was like, oh, another long day. And then he left.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where
Like,
I'm like, oh wow, like
where'd that come from?
he absorbed,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know the name for it, but he absorbed my brother's burnout and fatigue.
Yeah.
So these things, they carry.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So then moving into, because, you know, we are the trauma queens.
Yes.
Of, like, chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic stress and trauma can, like, automatically you're dysregulated, right? And we know that when we are dysregulated, that's typically when our inner critic is louder or talking more. And when we're experiencing, like, that chronic stress, like, our body is not able to get into a source of, like, calm.
Yeah.
And so our brain's just flipping out on
Absolutely.
us. So when it comes to, like, trauma and the impact, whether that's, you know, in the moment trauma or even past trauma, body keeping the score kind of situation, inner critic sounds louder.
And I think people really need to know that your negative self-talk doesn't have to be in your head. It can be in your body, like you said.
Yeah.
It's actually something that like I've talked to my own therapist about recently, of like how mentally I've worked through a lot of things that have happened with my health, but my body hasn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that if people still feel like their body isn't releasing that negative self-talk, or if they just feel like their body's carrying a negative, basically like memory,
right,
that's when things like Reiki, sound baths, meditation, grounding, acupuncture is so helpful, just to kind of kick us out of fight or flight and into rest and digest.
Yeah. Ooh, rest and digest.
It's a very fun one.
I
think I might try acupuncture myself, so
yeah,
we'll see.
That'd be really cool. I've heard the sound baths are pretty awesome.
That would be neat.
And like the salt caves.
I want to do goat yoga. That's not a sound bath or a salt cave.
Goat yoga would be so fun. Or puppy yoga.
There's puppy yoga. I know I sent one to you.
I know, we need to go do puppy yoga. That'd be so fun.
We could say it's a business meeting.
Yeah. Perks.
Put it on the card.
Okay, so we talked about childhood.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about trauma.
Yeah. But even though, like, I think that what's helpful is knowing that our negative self-talk, it's not like our frontal lobe where it's fully developed. Mm-hmm. It's always evolving.
Yeah.
So the person you dated when you were 16 could inform your negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Or the coach you had in college. Sorry. I promise I wasn't calling you out. I was just thinking of an example. Or like professors you have. Yeah. Or like coworkers, bosses. Your negative self-talk doesn't have to only be influenced by people when you were a child. Right. It will always be there. And so I think it's just reminding yourself and even checking in to be like, this thought, is this my voice? Or is this somebody else's? Who does this sound like right now? So it can change.
Getting curious. That's my favorite thing about therapy, is getting curious. Yes.
I always say like it's a question mark, not a period.
Not a period.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So fun.
So this is a fun one.
Questions. Yes. So do you remember the first time you realized that like the voice in your head wasn't you and it was somebody else? And like what was that like and what'd you do?
Yeah. So probably my first ever time experiencing this or realizing this would have to be college. And I think the only one that I could remember for sure was sophomore year. And it had to do with something that my mom always told me. I love my mother. But in my head, I was thinking like, oh, I need to put on makeup so that I can feel prepared to go out to this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the physical sensation that I felt. One, I felt a lot of shame, of course, but then I also rolled my eyes.
Oh, wow. Like you had a physical reaction.
Yes. Like I was like, what the heck? And I rolled my eyes, and then afterwards I was like, wait a minute, I don't feel that. Like that's not something that's me. And so it was almost then like freeing of feeling as if like I can release that because that's not my thought. That's not something that I believe. So it was kind of a nice little spectrum of emotions that I went through of like, ooh, there's a lot of shame there. But then I was like, ooh, that's annoying. And then I said, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to hold on to that.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so that was mine.
I don't think I recognized it that early.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is something like I've openly talked to my mom about as an adult, but she would always say like, fake it till you make it as a kid. But at the same time, like, in the time, that wasn't a problem. Like, growing up, like, that wasn't an uncommon phrase. It just wasn't helpful for me emotionally.
Yeah.
I think it, like, reinforced my own cognitive distortions of, like, shove it down, minimizing again.
Right.
And encourage that minimization that I did naturally. And so I think for a long time, I remember telling myself, like, fake it till you make it over and over and over again. Yeah. Especially with distance running and athletics. Mm-hmm. You turn your brain off. Right. Especially that, like, last 20% of a race. It's very much, like, there were certain acronyms that I cannot repeat on something we're going to post publicly. But it was like, nope, you just muscle it through. Yeah. And, like, if you don't have a bodily reaction when you're done, you haven't pushed yourself hard enough. Turn your brain off. And I think I finally recognized it, saying, like, in college, of, like, I actually don't want to fake it till I make it. Can I not do that? Because that's not mine anymore. Yeah. So it took me a little while, but for a while, like, I almost took that voice as my own, but it wasn't. I think it's pretty common.
Yeah. And, like, when we think about this, of course, a lot of my inner critic is dealt a lot in, like, shame. Yeah. And so, like, how it affects us, and we think, like, oh, it's just the way that you talk to yourself. It's just a small part. Yes, it is just a small part, but it also, it takes up 80% of your thoughts. Yeah. Like, that's 80% of what's going on in your brain for the day. Mm-hmm. So it can show up as, like, anxiety, depression, task paralysis. Yes. Maybe, like, not going for something, instead, like, feeling that shame, that guilt of, like, I'm not prepared for this.
Like, decision fatigue. Yeah. Like, not feeling comfortable making a decision. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's very frequent in my social circles, I feel like.
So, definitely showing up in the mental health spectrum of, like, feeling that anxiety and feeling that low motivation. Mm-hmm. Well, even depression.
Like, and physically. And I know that, like, this is kind of like a buzz phrase right now, but it's having really high cortisol. Yeah. And of course, there are certain medical conditions where, like, you have, like, especially high cortisol because there's things like a pituitary tumor. Right. Again, that is an exception. I was actually tested for that in grad school, I think.
That would make sense.
Yeah. It was actually an interesting test. It was like they gave me a medication. It was just like a tablet. It was right before COVID, and they like
took tablet.
Yeah, and then they, like, took my blood, and I felt normal. But there's also, like, a urine test, whatever. But your cortisol being elevated for too long, causes so many things physically. And so when we have that negative self-talk, again, it's telling our body inherently we cannot rest. Yeah. And that doesn't mean, like, we can't take a vacation. That means you can't stand still. You can't turn your brain off. You're not allowed to sleep. Over time, like, that will wreck your physical health, your nervous system.
And the cortisol can get stored in the body.
Yes.
And it's sometimes very hard to get out. So even if you try and wake up for that day and, like, try and get yourself regulated, do all the things, you still might have, like, 2 weeks worth stuck in there. Well, but then
it's also the thought of, like, why can't I relax? Yeah. That's where I actually am currently. Of, like, why can't my body relax? Right. Why is my body not going to chill? That's the sign of, like, your cortisol's been too high for too long, honey.
Right. And then we think about that in regards to relationships. This is familial, this is friends, this is partners, all the things of your inner critic is telling you, one, so many things about who you are in that relationship, but then also, two, it can tell you a lot of that kind of fortune telling, that mind reading of what are they thinking. Here's what they're thinking. And it causes us to feel like, okay, I can't be vulnerable, I can't open up, I gotta shut down, I gotta protect myself. Or on the opposite end, which I feel like sometimes I tend to take, is, like, over explaining. Yeah. Over, like, describing, being, like, very vocal about everything that's going on, which, you know, sometimes that can have a negative impact on me because I'm like, I don't know if these are actually my feelings right now or if it's just a feeling in the moment.
Well, okay. Have you ever heard of, like, the shopping cart theory? Your comment has a point. It's that however you put away your shopping cart after you finish at the grocery store says a lot about you. I want to add to that. I think it says a lot about how your self-talk is and potentially about your cognitive distortions. Of course, this is not like a Rorschach test. Like, this isn't like an aptitude test by any means. Yeah. But I think it kind of is. Because it shows, like, because obviously some people, they leave their shopping carts in the middle of the parking lot. Oh. It's, like, propped up against a car.
Frustrates the mess out of me.
Right. Yes. But though, so, like, for others, and I was with a friend shopping one day, and I realized this, and she was like, well, I need to be a good person, so I need to put it back.
Yeah.
But but at the same time, like I've never had that thought. Mine's always I'm very minimal, so of course I'm gonna put it back. Like this is meaningless, and this also doesn't say anything about myself as a person. It's just what you do. A minimizer,
right?
But then like my friend saying like, no, I should be doing this. Yeah, it's a shoulder. Yeah. So I think like how you behave sometimes socially and with strangers says a lot about your inner critic and your self-talk.
That is so interesting because mine is I'm going to put it back so that the person who has to go and get all of those cards has one less card that they have to get.
So you're already like accommodating and people pleasing a little bit?
Yeah. For people that, one, I don't even know, or two, if they even have someone that does that.
Well, because it's one of those things where like I don't think anything of it. I'm like, well, this is just what good people do.
Right.
And it's also like, this also doesn't make me a good person either.
Yeah.
It just means I'm like making life, like you said, easier or fine for someone else.
Yeah. Interesting.
So how do you put your shopping cart back? If you put it in the parking lot, you know, I have some feelings as a person, but like as a therapist, like we can unpack that.
Let's process that.
Let us know. Please tell us if, however you're viewing this information or listening, let us know. Like, what do you do? We should make a study. Is there a correlation between what you do with your shopping cart and your
inner critic?
Cognitive distortions?
That'd be awesome. That's research that I can get behind and do. Yeah. And speaking of research, so research shows people with high levels of negative self-talk are 1.5 times more likely to develop depression and anxiety.
The math is math.
Yeah, she is. Like, that's fair, right?
Well, because I feel like it's just this idea of like you can't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, you're wrong. It's almost like this ultimate toxic relationship with yourself of a gaslighting partner. Yeah.
Or that you need to be better or do better because you're not good enough.
Well, and again, this is off script, but on topic. I think sometimes we gravitate towards people who match our negative self-talk. And I think that's really important for us to recognize is sometimes we'll be with a partner or a friend who sounds like our inner critic because that's actually comfortable for us. It's validating, it's comfortable, and it's what we're used to. But if we think about it, it's like, no, this person's mean to us. This is a bully. This is someone that's, again, a bit of a toxic relationship. But if it's what we're used to, it's what we might actually accept in terms of how we're treated.
Right. It's that idea of like felt safety versus actual safety.
Exactly. So definitely when we're like acknowledging these things, like this is a way that it can impact us. Yeah. Like we talked about in our relationships, we can attract people whose voice emulates that bully in our head. Yeah. And we don't even realize it sometimes. Right. And I think part of our frontal lobe developing is like, oh, that's not right. That's not what I want.
I'm not here for that one right now. So then the question that we always love to end with.
What now?
What do we do with this? So how do we challenge those, that inner critic, that negative self-talk? And, you know, something interesting, and this is for essentially like all the things that we think and how our body responds to events, is we're not going to convince it otherwise. So just sitting and saying like, don't do that. Okay, cool. Yeah. Like, I know when I'm in an argument or when I'm upset and someone says, just don't be upset, I'm like, okay, appreciate it. So when we try and do that to ourselves, you guys, it's not going to work. No. It's not going to work like that.
Like, you don't invalidate. Right. Just do not invalidate yourself.
Yeah.
At all.
Give it space. Give it space. And so...
Our favorite phrase.
Our catchphrase, naming it to tame it. So like calling it out, giving space for it, being like, okay, right now I'm feeling shame.
And like, I'm minimizing, I'm catastrophizing. And again, like you always say, do not put judgment on that naming and say like, okay, because I know for me, like if I say I'm minimizing, I automatically feel guilty for it. It's like, no, that's going to be neutral. It's not good. It's not bad. I'm minimizing myself. I'm catastrophizing. Right. And then you can say like, okay, if I am all or nothing thinking, I'm magical thinking, that's a cognitive distortion. Right. That just means I have a filter on. Right. Got a filter on, or it's like I'm wearing glasses that are not my prescription. Yep. Just naming it.
It's information. That's what we're looking at. Is it's information that we're going to be curious about. There is no need for us to attack it. Yes. At this point. Okay. So then we name it to tame it. And then self-compassion.
That's a hard one. And I think self-compassion, I always like to talk about it. It's like starting a new workout routine. The first few times you practice self-compassion, it feels off. Yeah. It's a little bit uncomfortable. You might feel like you're doing something wrong. And also, like, you might not see immediate results. It's like when you go to the gym and run a mile and you're like, well, why can't I do a half marathon? Right. It's like, no, you got to build. Yeah. You build stamina here.
So you know how last session I talked about how we name our inner critic? Yep. So for this, for self-compassion, we also name our positive self-talk.
Yeah.
Of like saying,
Absolutely.
okay, I know for me, I've never named mine.
I haven't either, actually.
But yeah. Just
well, because we haven't given them importance.
Right. We were just
sadly.
like, this is just the way that it is. But with naming that, then we can almost essentially make decisions as if they are characters.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, hey, this thought is not me. I get to kick it off the ledge, do the things. But then also I get to replace that. And that's not with toxic positivity. Like, everything's okay. Everything's fine. You don't have to worry about it. But instead of a more supportive voice, like your little cheerleader. Yes. My kids talk about little cheerleader in your brain. They support you. Even if you're losing, they're going to be like, hey, you still have the ability to do better.
And it's unconditional.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when we talk about that positive voice, we almost feel like we need to like prove them or we need to please them. No. Even on your worst day where your inner critic is the loudest, that cheerleader is still there.
Yeah.
They're still doing their thing.
Right.
Like actually the first thing that came to mind is like my grandmother. And I'm like, I think like that's probably what I would like name that voice.
Yeah.
Because when I think of like unconditional positive regard, I think of her. Or like my nephews. They're not unconditionally positive, but they're pure.
Yes.
Ish. As much as toddlers and infants could be. So naming that. Yeah. And I also think that, and this is actually one of my favorite ways to work through negative self-talk. Fight it. Don't invalidate it. I actually talk to my clients about this very often. Imagine you're taking it to court.
Ooh.
Like whatever situation, like I imagine the Legally Blonde courtroom.
Yes.
Where they're talking about the perm and the shower.
Gosh, yeah.
Yes. You got like the pink suit on. Maybe that's why I have a pink wig.
So you got your hair on Tuesday?
Right. And then you showered?
Yeah. Like, yes, I showered.
Right. And so it's taking that thought, take it to court. Because again, like we're not negating it. We're not invalidating it. We're adding context. We're just adding more data to draw from. Yeah. Because it's one of those where it's like, okay, say we start with a thought of, ooh, like I accidentally took out my anxiety on a friend when I was talking to them. And then you overgeneralize and say, that means I'm a bad person. Take that thought to court. Yeah. Take the I'm a bad person to court. And then you add data and it's like, no, like I've done this, I've done that. This is what I know is true. And then you reach a conclusion that says, I misspoke and I misstepped and I should take accountability for that, but that does not make me a bad person. Right. You're essentially peeling back the layers and the filters so it no longer exists and you can just see a better enhanced version of reality. Yeah. Take that stuff to court.
I love that. And also to add into that, is it based right now or is it based in the future or is it based in the past?
And like, are you holding yourself accountable for a past mistake too? Like, is this leverage?
Or a future mistake that you're trying to pre-plan?
Tripping?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yikes. That one hit the soul. But yeah, so there's that. And then bonus, journaling. But love journaling for others. So journaling it out, you know, giving yourself those affirmations, putting them up on your wall or on your phone, something that you can just like kind of remind yourself of.
Real affirmations.
Yes.
Not like the generalized ones like are good.
Yeah.
But when we're talking to that inner critic,
right,
they don't care about the generalized ones. No. They want to see that like, okay, Sarah, having birthday cake for breakfast does not mean you are not a wellness queen.
Yeah.
That means you are balanced. That is a realistic affirmation for me. And it's this idea of like, I can still have cold pizza for dinner and still be kind to myself.
I love that. So that's your real affirmation for yourself?
Yes, but I think that like current ones would be like, it's okay to slow down. That does not imply anything about being productive.
Girl, I love that because when we get down later, I'm about to hit you.
I know
with something. I need to cover my notes.
So okay, what about you? What are your like realistic affirmations?
Okay, so when I think of, I tried to make this very present, and knowing that like Cinco de Mayo is this weekend. Woohoo!
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, it's Monday. Okay, technically, but you know the Tacos and Margs Fest in downtown Atlanta is happening this weekend, and like. I am going. I'm going to go celebrate and, you know, have some fun. So mine would have to be quoting Toby Keith.
Who's that?
Bro, Ryan would be so upset with you.
Is this a
right now.
Person?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, sorry. I'm not sorry, but.
Sorry, not sorry. No, I honestly understand why you don't know about this human.
Is this like old school?
He's kind of. Okay. He is past.
Got it.
But he did a very yeehaw country music. So like
Oh,
not
like Tim McGraw.
more.
Okay, I just know
more
because
yeehaw.
he was he in the Hannah Montana movie?
Tim McGraw or Toby Keith?
Tim McGraw.
I was gonna say Toby Keith definitely was not. Tim McGraw possibly because he has a soft side.
He was in some movie as a dad.
Yes,
Okay,
he's an actor now.
Okay.
But to quote his song, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. I'm like recognizing, okay,
Yeah.
I gotta give myself some like time.
Yeah.
I am 29. I'm about to turn 30 in a couple of months. The body, she ain't fully energized 24/7. And so realizing like I gotta take some peace time and some like naps and like pace myself. So that would be my verbal affirmation right now. It's like I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was.
I love these. Okay, unhinged version.
Yeah.
What's your unhinged? I think, okay, hold on. Mine. The books I read are not cheating on my spouse. Because I'm not. They're just fun novels. They're spicy novels.
Yeah. Oh oh, unhinged version.
Or like, I don't know. What else am I doing? Oh my gosh, there's one other one.
Yeah.
My lack of green thumb does not imply anything about my future role in parenthood.
Okay. So I like that one. I might have to like push from that one and say, just because you can't cook does not mean that you can't take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And can't take care of others.
It's the same thing. It's like, just because I kill plants does not mean I'll kill a child one day. So also like have some fun with it.
Yeah.
And I also think that like sometimes like having the unhinged version of your self-talk will help you realize just how far your inner critic gets from reality sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I have had that thought of like, girlfriend, if you can't even keep this plant alive, what are you doing? But then like, hold on, add some levity.
Yeah.
Like,
plants are hard.
Plants are hard.
Yeah.
They also like can't cry.
Right. They can't tell you what they need. They're really finicky with the sunlight and the water, and some of them they need different things like, depending on the plant.
Come on now, I'm a busy gal. So
Right.
Let Brittany live.
And to that token, if you repeat it multiple times, so like that inner critic, once you hear yourself like say it in your brain and you say like, oh, okay, that showed up. If you just like verbalize it over and over and over and over and over again, you start to be like, what? That doesn't even feel that it. One, it's just words, and two, that doesn't even feel like something that makes sense.
Well, so okay, if we're gonna reflect on it honestly about how we're working on it, I actually think about something that I did. I can't remember if it was this week or last week. I think it was last week actually, because I had this whole cleaning schedule before my mother-in-law came to visit. Because I again like I want to make sure our home is nice and clean, it's warm, it's welcoming, it's ready for guests. It's also because it's family. I want to make sure like she's got good stuff there. I like had the guest bathroom fully stocked, so she was good.
Right.
But I remember thinking like, oh, like because when we were starting the practice, I had a little bit more time at home, and I was on it with cleaning. Yeah. Especially because like obviously my spouse works full time. We divide our household chores evenly, but I took on a little bit more just because I was around. Yeah. And so I remember having the thought last week of, wow, like I have let a few of these chores slide, so I'm not a good spouse. But then I like said it again. I was like, hold on. I let chores slide because we were building a business that built very quickly and pretty successfully, I will say. Yeah. I don't know, humble brag, but I think like we did things pretty quickly. Yeah. And we're gonna
Other people have said so.
Sure.
So
and it was one of those, and I kept repeating it to myself, like you said, like, I'm not a bad wife. Yeah. No. I just have life happening. So even like you said, that's a very large thundercloud.
And it's dark out there, bro.
She getting dark. I hope the dogs are okay. But yes, but again, it's like repeating that to yourself of like, what is that inner critic telling you? Repeat it. Yeah. Is it starting to sound like a stand-up comedy routine or like when ChatGPT roasts us and it's a little bit like far from the truth? Yeah. Asking yourself that. Right. I love that too.
Okay, so closing out. Telling each other.
I had a really fun time.
Did you? I did too. I was sitting there, I was like, Oh, so many, but I'll keep it to 3.
Yeah. Okay, so 3 things.
So 3 things. Well, I did 3, but we can do as many. Whatever. But that something that we want to tell. So Caroline telling Sarah's inner critic.
Yes.
These things.
Yeah, because I think that so I actually thought of this. Whoa, thunder.
Poor Penny. She's shaking.
I know the dogs are like,
now. Like,
watch this not be able to be picked up on the audio, and people
are like, they're just going wild right now.
It's fine. It's just it's our catastrophe brain.
Yeah.
And I thought of this because when we think about inner critic, and I actually talk to a lot of friends about it a lot. Yeah. I always think about like, I wish you saw me how I do. Yeah. Or like, I wish you saw yourself. Sorry, how I do, and it's this idea. And I think that like this is like a cool activity to like bring that up. Yeah. So like things that like we wish that we could tell each other's inner critic. So okay, for yours. Oh man, there's a lot I can say. Just being is more than enough. Yeah. Literally just by showing up. Mm. No checklists, no to-dos, no aesthetics, no boards. Like, it's more than enough. Yeah. And like, you don't have to bring anything to the table to be a gift. Oh. I like the word choice, that one. That's true. I think that one. Slowness is good and stillness is good. Mm. Because then like you can see how much you've done. Yeah. Because you do a lot for everyone all the time. And then saying, oh my gosh.
Okay, if you guys didn't hear that one, these mics aren't doing their job because that one was wild.
And then saying no to other people can also mean saying yes to yourself.
Okay, yeah. So, definitely that last one I need. I appreciate that. I love those. Thank you. Of course. Okay, so for Sarah, I would say, and I had to write mine down so that I made sure that I gave them the space and time that they needed. But your worth is not defined by how much you work or how much you do. Especially when you're making yourself sick because you're working so hard.
As I've had to like back up to clear my throat because I've been congested.
Yes. Then, so that's number 1. Second one. And this one's basic. Yeah. People are mean. Yeah. Don't let them be mean to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, like, you have a voice and you deserve to use it. Yeah. In those times. Okay, and then number 3, trust yourself.
That's true. That's valid.
You need to trust yourself. Because sometimes I feel like we do a little bit of second guessing, which I do too. For sure. Which is why we work so well together. A lot of these we both share. So
but I don't second guess you and you don't second guess me. Correct. Like earlier you were like, hey, I made this. I was like, it's great.
And I said, no.
I hadn't even seen it.
So those would be mine.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's a great way to round things out. Yeah. But of course, like, just remember that when we kind of tap into negative self-talk and this kind of spiral of thought once in a while, this isn't universal and it's always evolving. And I feel like we always say this, but you're not alone and you don't have to be alone. And it could be as small as like talking to a friend and like having that back and forth to see kind of what might be helpful to hear and try out some of the things you mentioned.
Yeah. So if you'd like to have chats about these things
in a clinical
capacity with a therapist that is us.
So it's like this podcast episode times 100. Yeah. Personalized too.
Us doing a lot less talking.
And applying it to your life in a very creative, individualized way.
Yes. And visit us on www.soulhavengeorgia.com. Also, we've got an Instagram at Soulhaven Counseling. We have at Couch Convos the Pod. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. Please. We really love doing
rate us if you're listening on Spotify.
Yes, please rate us. Please. Like, our ultimate goal in doing this is to be able to make mental health more accessible. And by doing all those things, y'all, we're just gonna call it out. It helps the algorithm of being able to show up. Yeah, to show up in people's lives when they need it most. Yeah. So, and I love you guys.
Absolutely, and of course, Couch Combos is not a substitute for therapy.
Correct.
We are licensed therapists, but we aren't necessarily your therapist right now. Mm-hmm. So if you are in crisis, in danger, please call 911, 988. Go to your closest emergency room. But again, like if you are hearing a lot of the things we say, you like our style, and you really want to amp it up a little bit, first of all, good for you. You go, Glen Coco. Mm-hmm. reach out to us. And the thing is, like, if you're not in the state of Georgia, we'll help you find someone.
Yeah.
You can.
Correct. All right. See you guys next time.
Bye.